Master, got your head.
Idira, the unsanctioned psyker witch of the von Valancius dynasty. Idira was a loyal crew member of Theodore von Valancius, and she becomes part of your retinue once you inherit the title of Rogue Trader. Idira is a unsanctioned psyker, which means she has some unique properties to her, but it also makes her very destructive. However, here's between you and me. As an overseer, Idira gets a new ability thanks to Cyberraven to move perils to enemies. It does mean that you're not going to be farming as high psi rating, but it means you're less likely to explode. During testing on the media version, I would sometimes have enemies take the summon of demons and Idira wouldn't explode and die. Other times she would, so it might be a bit finicky with how much distance is between you and enemies. But as long as they're fairly close and within the radius of the Cyberraven, chances are they're going to take it. However, you still have to watch out for tremors, because this will still knock yourself down as well as allies, but you won't be taking all the effects of other perils, which means the Psyker's breastplate becomes much more valuable in Idira than the Warp Conductor gloves, because the Warp Conductor gloves only work when the user creates perils, whereas the Psyker's breastplate tends to be whenever there's any perils. So if the perils are passed to enemies, you still get the increase in psi rating. I found with this version of her, she greatly benefits from the Ethereal Visor. Now, there are two builds that we're going to be looking at. In the main video, we're going to be looking at Overseer, and in the end, we're going to look at an alternative, more combat-orientated Bounty Hunter. You can build her as both an offensive or a passive buffing overseer. I elected to go for the AoE buff route. If you want to make a more offensive option, then that's going to be perfectly viable for you to make those changes. But let's actually start looking at the origin of Idira. Looking at Idira's origin, being an unsanctioned psyker means she starts with +1 psi rating on top of a regular psyker. She also starts with 2 schools in both Diviner and Telepath. This means that you have access to 2 Psyker schools, and you can go from there. Divination is very good for buffs. Telepath isn't too bad for a damage one, but it is somewhat overclassed by Pyromancy. For this build, I am going to be focusing on just Telepath, but if you want to go for a more offensive build, then you are going to want to sneak in Pyromancy. I elect to pick up Biomancy and go heavily in on that, because there's a lot of new combos that we can abuse and break with Invigorate, Warp Speed, Iron Arm, and Metabolic Overcharge, which is what I'm going to be going through mostly on this build. So with that in mind, Idira, even though it says she is a Forsaken World, is once again another Imperial World companion, as with all the human companions. I know in the previous video I said all companions, but I meant all human companions. Her humanity's finest is willpower. So let's actually start looking in the build and what we're going to do with this whilst discussing the game plan. Idira joins us as rank 2 and an operative. Operative, yes, I know, is currently the weakest archetype, and it's going to be a while before any buffs possibly come in 1.4. The whole purpose of this is to use exploits as a gimmick. However, this does not activate on extra turns, so it tends not to be the best to build into it. It's actually what holds operatives back the most, along with having low initiative because they can't build into agility, and perception doesn't seem to be as highly weighed as agility is when it comes to determining turn order, at least not currently at the time of recording the video. So with this in mind, I have built my Idira to be mostly a buff bot and to focus around those buffs and not so much the analyze and expose weakness gimmick. So analyze enemies comes in at your rank 1 ability, and then we're going to start building into awareness because that's what comes pre-locked. Idira can be used for Lord Xenos and Lord Warp, but awareness is also quite useful to have in the party, and she already has 1 point locked into it, unfortunately. I would prefer to go Lord Warp or Lord Xenos, but you don't really have that choice unless you use Toy Box. Rank 3, you get Exposed Weakness, which can lower the boss's armor based on your perception, and we do invest into perception, so this isn't too bad. Rank 4, you get Dismantling Attack, and we are going to take Uncanny Sight, so on the first turn, we do apply 1 exploit to everything, even if we can't see them. This will help out any other operatives, and it will also have some benefits to some of our other abilities. Rank 5, we take Ballistic Skill and Thriving in Peril. Every Perils with Warp increases momentum by, at the moment, 25, but it's Willpower bonus plus Resolve plus Psi rating. So this is a very useful feature that we're going to be using to get heroic turns much earlier. At rank 6, we take Weak Body, Weak Soul, which lowers the enemy's toughness and willpower by 1 round when we use Exposed Weakness, along with more Ballistic Skill. The reason we're taking Ballistic Skill early on is before we become an Overseer, we're going to want to be a bit of a sniper to lower the risk of exploding before we're able to pass that on to enemies. Rank 7, we take Biomancy because it will unlock a lot of powerful talents for us, as well as opening up the route for buffing. This is a very powerful buff for Act 1, for most of our companions will benefit from this. We then increase our awareness, and then we pick up Passive Learning. Passive Learning on the first turn in combat, the operative randomly distributes the same number of exploits as when using Analyze Enemy amongst all enemies within a 10-cell radius around the operative. We also take Subtle Manipulation at rank 8. This can also be Adrenaline Surge, but you will respec back to Subtle Manipulation once you get the Spirit Drape in Act 2. Subtle Manipulation stops enemies from being able to attack you and use offensive psychic powers. Adrenaline Surge for the first round will lower the cost of all Biomancy powers by 1. However, it does not apply on your extra turn, just your main turn, much like your operative abilities. At rank 9, we take Dismantling Attack Upgrade 3, which will lower the dodge and armor of all enemies by 15% within the 5-cell radius around the target that you shoot. We then take some Medicaid because we get an extra one, so it's always good to be able to have someone that can heal. At rank 10, because I need it in my party, I go into Law, Xenos, and Perception. Law Xenos is not necessary here, so you can take another intelligence skill if you so desire. At rank 11, we take Psycho Minoris. This is the first time we can take this because she is an unsanctioned Psycho, along with more Law Xenos. Rank 12, you can take Enfeeble and Invigorate. I choose to go Invigorate for an AoE buff to companions that can proc a lot of abilities to get up, and there's a lot of ways to abuse this. With the Overseer, you can now use this AoE, so it is very useful because it can be used to build up Idira's Psi rating, as well as also getting some temp HP for allies. I also take Confer Immunity at rank 12, so this will allow any excess healing to go to temp wounds. Rank 13, we take Fresh Target, which is when we attack an enemy that is at full wounds, we deal extra damage. This is going to be based on our perception bonus. Very useful, and this is why I'm not taking small damaging abilities on Cassia anymore, and why I don't do it on Idira. Rank 13, we also increase our perception, and at rank 14, we get Willpower and Pulse of Life, which allows our heals to critical with a 31% chance. Rank 15, we take Dismantling Attack, which will lower enemies' weapon skill and ballistic skill when they've been hit by Dismantling Attack. For the early game, Idira is going to be using her Psycho Staff for some AoE, and obviously her Psychic Shriek for some single target. To lower the risk of exploding due to Psycho powers, you will want to pick up the Long Last, which you can get from Cassia Station on Urek 5. This is going to be very useful for the early game, and the early game you're mostly going to be sniper operative with a little bit of buffing support. It's not going to be too much impact, but it's still going to be quite useful at this point, and you can be using Invigorate to remove any injuries before you have a good supply of Medicaid. You're not going to notice much difference here, and as you notice, I have not built into Pyromancy. If you do want to go into Pyromancy, you're going to want to, instead of taking Biomancy, you're going to want to take Pyromancy, and you're going to want to take Backdraft and Fire Within instead of the immunity talents that I took here. Tier 2 is when things get a little bit crazy. So at rank 1, you're going to take the Cyber Raven Proficiency. What this does is it allows Idira to relay her non-attacking powers through the Cyber Raven. So you cast it on the Raven, and it AoE casts it. Rank 2, we take Prescience. This will increase Intelligence, Perception, Fellowship, and Willpower in an AoE buff. We then at rank 3 get the best ability in this archetype for Idira, which is Warp Buffer. If the Overseer is within 4 cells of the Cybraven, whenever the Overseer triggers Perils of the Warp, it affects a random enemy inside that area instead of the Overseer. If there are no enemies in this area, Perils of the Warp affects the Overseer as usual. This has not been 100% consistent for me. Sometimes Warp Tremors will still proc on Idira, and sometimes she will still explode and die and summon a Daemon. However, other times, Daemons just randomly summon next to enemies and Idira doesn't explode. It does seem to lower the chance of perils actually proccing as well. Perils to proc caused by yourself, so the Warp Conductor gloves weren't getting much benefit from Idira using this. However, the Psycho's Breastplate was. Rank 4, you get Overcharge. Overcharge allows your Cyber Raven to heal to full health when you use this, and then it can relay attacking psychic powers. During my time on the test server, this was doing 1/10 of the normal damage of her Psychic Shriek. So on an enemy I would test, if I did a Psychic Shriek, it would do 1,000 damage. If I reloaded and then relayed it back through the Raven, it was doing 140, but to all enemies in the area. I don't know if this was intentional or if something else was going on because the combat log was bugged. However, I have reported this to the developer, so hopefully this will be patched on live. And if it is, you can then easily build this to be more offensive. The reason I went buffing more than offensive was because on the test build, this wasn't working properly. If it does work in the future, I will add a spreadsheet build that you can check after this video down in the comments to see how to build that. Rank 5, we get an AP increase and we increase our willpower. We're no longer going to be focusing on ballistic skills because there's no need to, with the Raven preventing a lot of our self-damage from psychic powers. Rank 6, we get Psycho Endurance and willpower. Rank 7, we get warp speed. We can now AoE buff to increase our allies' MP, agility, and AP. We also continue to increase our awareness. Rank 8, we get Castigating Echoes. The effects of psychic powers relayed through the Cyber Raven is calculated if the Psi rating were 1 higher. We then get some more willpower and we pick up Strange Vitality. When the Psyker's allies or Psyker themselves under the effects of psychic powers, they gain +5 toughness to each power. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of powers going around in AoE, so this is very useful. Rank 10, we take Rive Calibration. The first use of Overseer ability in combat costs 1 AP less, so you can relocate your Raven for less. I have not been using its attacking powers because I found it way to be low to have any sort of impact with how I've been using Idira. Rank 11, we get Perception increase and more awareness. Rank 12, I took the Overcharge 3 because I didn't know if 1 or 2 were properly working. Again, this will require more testing on the live version. At rank 13, we take Psi Resonator. When the Overseer relays psychic powers through the Cyber Raven for the first time in a round, they gain 1 AP. Psi Resonator and Symbiosis for the Servo Skull Swarm again weren't working on the test server, so I have reported these as issues. At rank 13, we get Fatebringer, which is allies under the effect of at least 1 psychic power gain additional 21% armor penetration. This is going to be 5 + 2 times Psyker's Psi rating. At rank 14, we increase our intelligence lore Xenos more. Rank 15, we take Strategic Adaptation. This is the core ability to increase your attacks. If you're going for an offensive Idira, you're going to want to take this ability first. Depending on the familiar's number of wounds, the Overseer or the familiar gains a special benefit for 1 round. Less than 50% wounds, the next 3 hits against the familiar have their damage reduced, but 50% wounds or more, the Overseer deals 16% more damage on their next attack, which is going to be based on your pet stats. If that attack kills the target, it then does not count towards the attack limit per turn, and the Overseer regains any AP spent on it, which means use Strategic Adaptation for this, and then you can make 2 attacks, only costing the AP of 1 as long as you kill. So it's very, very useful. At rank 16, we get Second Sight, which increases our range of psychic powers. We then pick up Psychoterminus. Rank 17, we get Intelligence or Xenos. Rank 18, we take Resistance is Futile. So this one, what this does is it lowers the enemy's characteristics within a 3-cell radius. Alternatively, I had actually taken Corpus Conversion here at rank 18. Corpus Conversion is currently bugged, and I believe this bug's going to make it into live version. If the bug is still persistent, you do take Corpus Conversion at rank 18. What this will do is each psychic power that targets an ally will give you a +2 Psi rating. If you have all 6 of your retinue inside it, yeah, when I was doing my full buff loops, I was having 18 Psi rating turn 1 from buffs that when I then did a big attack would do huge damage to an enemy and then reset my Psi rating. So whilst Corpus Conversion bug, if you want to use that and abuse that because it does not work any way that is described, this goes at rank 18. Rank 19, we take Power Conduit, which is after triggering Psychic Phenomena or Perils of the Warp for the first time, the Psyker's next psychic power costs 1 action, where 1 AP less. And at rank 12, we take Overcharge Upgrade 1. Whenever the familiar becomes target of an enemy's attack, the Overseer has their ability damage increased by 2%. Again, I'm not sure if these were working correctly. The rank 1 upgrade gives us 2% ability damage, but I don't know if that was meant to be powers or just the pet itself. It didn't seem to be working either way. Rank 2 would give our familiar +30 characteristics, but I don't know if the familiar's characteristics imply anything to do with relayed powers because the combat log was not working. Rank 3 is whenever the Overseer uses an archetype ability, the Overseer and the familiar gain +1 deflection. That did seem to be working, but I don't know if that's meant to be exclusive to Overseer abilities, but we'll have to see on the live version. And the last possible one is whenever the Overseer uses reactivation, which is your ability to revive the pet, momentum value is increased by +5 for each member still in combat. Didn't find much use out of that one, but This means that from this point in, once you have the pet up, and especially once you then have your rank 3 ability warp buffer, you can then just spam buffs. When you have the Spirit Drape for the first round in combat, all your buffs cost 0 AP besides warp speeds, which will cost 1. What you do is you bring it down to Idira, and then she can fully AoE buff the party for 0 AP or 1 AP if you're using warp speed. And then when her main turn, or a finest hour turn, she'll actually have increased her psi rating for many perils, and then you'll be able to do more. We're going to build into getting the Psycho's Breastplate in Act 4, which is why the build takes this much later, because there's no point building it early. Tier 3 is when we start bringing Idira's build together to also go down the damage route, because why not do it all? At rank 1 we take Degrade Defense and Aftershock. Aftershock will give us an extra half much damage from mental damage, and we are focusing on telepathy here. Bear in mind that mental damage can be resisted by a lot of enemies. The Act 5 enemies are half resistant, and the Act 4 DLC Act 1 enemies, so this is from the Gene Stealers, are entirely immune. Rank 2 we take Awareness, and at this point this is where you take Corpus Conversion if it isn't a bug. If you've already taken it, you take Rite of Solar Nourishment here. Rank 3 we take Willpower and Pain Channeling. Pain Channeling will spread out excess damage to more targets. Rank 4, if you want to be the buffer, you take Metabolic Overcharge. There are so many ways that we can build up temp HP that allies can infinitely use this and not have any consequences. What Metabolic Overcharge does is it gives extra MP and AP based on our user's psi rating. So this can be very good to give to one of our soldiers, who can then entrench and then on finest hour have infinite AP attacks. Alternatively, you can just use it to get some extra actions, but yeah, any class that can use entrench to bank it is very good, especially if you're using invigorating resolve, because that way you generate temp HP as you kill, so you don't really suffer the negative effects. If you want to go for the more damage orientated, you take sensory deprivation here. We pick up awareness, and at rank 5 we pick up peak condition. This will give us extra strength based on our HP. This is so we can get the Psycho's Breastplate. We also pick up Psycho Extremis. Rank 6 we get more willpower, and we pick up Weak Hearts, which will increase our damage to blinded, stunned, immobilized or prone enemies. Rank 7 we pick up Sensory Deprivation. If you've already picked up Sensory Deprivation, you pick up Psychic Assault at this point, as well as some more Perception. Rank 8 we then get Mind Siege, which is enemies that have failed a willpower resistant test against psych powers take additional direct damage, and we also get Heavy Armor Proficiency. This is only if you're using the Psycho's Breastplate. If you're not using the Psycho's Breastplate, don't take Heavy Armor Proficiency and don't take peak condition. Rank 9 we then get Law Xenos and Eager Subordinates. If you are not going with Metabolic Overcharge, take Eager for Battle here instead. Rank 10 we get the AP increase. Rank 11 we pick up Psychic Barrage to increase our damage at range, because buffs will also buff this. We also take Law Xenos. Rank 12 we take Ballistics Calculations, which is attacks on a target that are affected by an exploit from a distance of 7 cells or further. This attack deals 15% more damage, so we're actually using some of the operative stuff here. We then get some Medicae, and then we pick up Deterioration. Deterioration will double the ways that we can increase damage to things. Now, if this is bugged and it's only working with Enfeeble, you will want to replace this. It depends if that's been fixed. It seemed to be fixed on the media version, so Deterioration was quite a big damage boost for me. We then get Perception. Rank 14 we then take Intelligence and Medicae. Rank 15 we take Extermination, so each attack will slowly build up, and we'll also get Warp Minds, which will give us our enemies negatives every 6 powers we use, and because we're spamming buffs, we go through those powers quite a lot. Rank 16 we take Rite of Solar Nourishment to increase our pet stats, and we also take Medicae. Rank 17 we take Tide of Excellence, which is every time we pop a exploit on an enemy, we get +1 damage and 2% armor penetration. This will mostly be for staff attacks. We then also take Mental Breach. Rank 18 I am taking Psychic Assault. If on the live version you have gone for the more damaging build, you would take Mind Rupture here. Mind Rupture and Overcharge is very powerful because it will target all enemies around it. Unfortunately, like I said, on the test build it wasn't working, and Overcharge was doing 1/10 the damage, so I did not build into it, but that is an option for you if you are testing to build that on the live version, if that is fixed. Rank 19 we take Vital Points, which is another damage increase along with Mind Thief, and to bring the build all together we get our AP increase. We are now a complete buffer and nuker, just absolute menace on the battlefield. As with my previous videos, I couldn't read all of the new items because some of them did not have descriptions. However, I still think what I've got here is going to be the best, but if they do have something better, and it is surprisingly better, do equip it. But we'll go through some what we've got on here. So for the head slot, I have the Ethereal Visor, which the wearer's psi rating is increased by 1. As long as the wearer's at 100% wounds, they deal 65% additional damage. Because we're going to have probably around 100 temp HP anyway, yeah, that's going to be a lot. Early game, a hood that is quite useful is the Cultist Hood, which is once per turn when the user uses a psychic power attack, they either restore 2 AP or take 10 ward damage with a 50% chance for each of these effects. Some people in the community think this is infinite. At least on the test build, it wasn't, but it was once around. Another upgrade to that is obviously the Dark Visionary Hood, which will increase your damage by 15%. But yeah, Ethereal Visor giving that 65% boost, which can be increased with more willpower bonus, which we will build a lot of willpower. Yeah, your damage is insane. We take the Vortex Pen. The wearer gains 5 willpower each time they choose an ally of themselves as target of ability. So I don't know if this is going to proc for all allies, but it will at least proc when you target your Raven. We then take Spirit Drape, which is for the first turn of combat. Yeah, Psych Powers cost 1 AP less during the first turn that are non-attacking. Very OP, just infinite buffs. The next one, it changes domination. Whenever the wearer kills an enemy, they receive a stack in +5 bonus to willpower until the end of combat. Again, willpower is about to go to the moon. I was using the Warp Conductor gloves, which is after triggering psychic phenomenal perils of the warp. The wearer's psi rating is increased by +1 till the end of combat. This does not seem to work when your Psycho powers are relayed to the enemies, so you might want to use the Abyssal Conduit Gloves, which increases the damage of your staffs, but you can still cause warp perils when you're not near enemies. There are actually some new items to force warp perils, so keep that in mind, because you might want to use that with these instead. The next one is the Signed Cape, sorry. Yeah, the wearer's incoming damage is reduced by Veil Degradation. So the more Veil Degradation, you've got damage reduction. There have been encounters where Idira was fighting something in high Veil and just took no damage. Very, very good. She's obviously got the Blood Drinker Staff, which gives us a nice 2 psi rating increase. And I have the Staff of Shock and Awe, mostly because you need an AoE effect that isn't mental, because some enemies are immune to mental damage. Because we've not taken Pyromancy, we don't have that. And because we've not gone into Sanctic, we don't have the Sanctic Staff, which is still the best nuking staff in the game, but because I wanted to focus on buffing, I didn't want to spread myself too thin between the two schools. You could easily build for the Sanctified Staff just using Word of the Emperor, but you're going to be able to loop it less than if you were a bounty hunter. The last one is the Boots of Decay. Each time the wearer uses a major psychic power, all enemies in their line of sight lose 30% of their deflection until the start of the wearer's next turn. Yeah, you can essentially one-shot the final boss because of this build. It's very strong. Now, obviously, it does have invulnerable phases, but you can essentially remove all of the enemy's armor with her... you use the Iron Eye Grenade, you then use Exposed Weakness, and then Boots of Decay, it just sets enemies' armor and deflection to 0, so you just destroy them, and you completely buff up your party. So it is a very powerful combination. Iron Eye Grenades, very good. Tears of Repentance, also very, very good. And then all of your Psychic Powers, obviously, very, very, very good. If you find any new stuff in the launch or anything else you want to suggest, do let me know below, because we can revise this for the sheet later on, but from what I've seen on test build, this seems to be my best setup for Idira. Lastly, for an alternative build, if you still want to stick to the bounty hunter loops, which are just as strong as ever, you can build Idira to go more for that. Now, the build that I've got here hasn't been entirely optimized, so I've spent more time with the Overseer build. Now, the difference with this one is you're going to take Pyromancy, so you can get that backdraft pain channeling combo going quite early on. Aftershock could still be easily replaced on this version, so you could actually put in Fresh Target earlier if you're not planning to use the mental attack. So I'm going to put a little note for that here. The other thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to probably get in ballistics calculation, which we do pick up around level 47 here. The main difference is Save the Kill is going to be giving us some extra turns. Fire Within is obviously going to give us extra attack economy. We still take Psychic Assault. We still take Thriving in Peril. We also pick up Hot on the Trail. Now, on this version of the build here, I do have Shield of the Emperor and Hammer of the Emperor, but you could easily change this to Mind Rupture and Firestorm, which are going to do a lot of bang for your buck. So because you've already built up to Psychic Assault, that is going to be very doable, but it's going to be more depending on what you want to do here. So you don't even need to pick up Prescience, because you can build up a lot of willpower yourself, but being able to just throw them out, especially with bounty hunter loops, is obviously very nice. So this is just an alternative that you can do with going into bounty hunter here. You still get Fatebringer, you still get Inspiring Trophy, which is going to be ways to generate some extra MP, along with like Hunting Surge, and you do get Fresh Target later. If you pick it up later, again, you're going to want to replace this with another power, maybe even getting in Melting Armor or something here from Pyromancy. So that's going to be something else that we can throw in here that can be useful later on in the game, but you're going to be naturally lowering armor anyway through your usages of exposed weakness, but it's still going to be a very strong build. You could even change out Malign Influence for combat meditation, but that's going to bring us all together. I hope you enjoy Idira. Yes, this build is going to be, well, this build video has been a lot less focused than previous ones, but there are so many things that you can do with Idira, and she's so overpowered and she's so beautiful in this update. I've never much liked Idira as a companion, but obviously the Overseer variant, making her less of a net negative for my team, has definitely won me over on her. Anyway, I hope you guys all have all the best and you enjoy using Idira in this new update. Till then, Reverend out. I'll see you next time.